Let me tell you something, when a child starts acting like he's the king of the castle, somebody in that house forgot to remind him who actually pays the light bill. Good evening, everybody. Auntie May here, and you know I don't show up unless there's a lesson, a laugh, and a little bit of love to go around. Now, I had a situation in my family that had me blinking like I saw a ghost. My sweet little boy, the same one I carried for 9 months and prayed over, somehow decided that my sister, his auntie, was his personal servant. Oh, yes. He had her fetching snacks, cleaning his mess, finding his socks, and running around like she was on payroll. And what I did next, well, let's just say it reset the whole household. So let me share with you this little story, and the 6 lessons I learned that every parent, auntie, uncle, and grandparent needs to hear. Respect starts at home, and it starts early. I want you to picture a house filled with the usual daily noise that comes with children. Toys on the floor, a television humming in the background, a plate left on the table even though you asked 3 times for it to be moved. You know that scene because every parent, every aunt, every uncle, and every grandparent has lived in it at least once. Now imagine a child walking through that space with the attitude of a tiny ruler. Not a helper, not a learner, not a young person growing into responsibility. No, a ruler, a little king, a child who believes that the world exists to meet his needs and nothing else. This belief does not grow naturally. It grows because the adults around him either built it or allowed it to take root. That is why respect has to be planted early and watered often, or else the child learns that other people are simply tools he can pick up or put down when he pleases. So when I say respect starts at home, I mean that children do not wake up one day understanding how to treat others. They learn that through every interaction that surrounds them. When a child asks for something and an adult jumps to do it immediately without a word about gratitude, the child does not learn kindness. He learns entitlement. When a child speaks sharply and no one pauses to note the tone, he learns that tone is not important. When a child demands instead of asks and the demand is met with silence or with obedience, the child learns that demand is the way to get what he wants. And if that pattern continues day after day, that child will grow into someone who believes that authority is owed to him simply because he opened his mouth. Children watch everything. They study how we move, how we speak, and how we connect with others. They notice the sigh of frustration when we feel overwhelmed. They notice the warmth in our voice when we feel joy. They notice the way we speak to servers in restaurants. They notice how we speak to our parents and siblings. They notice how we handle moments of conflict. And they will copy it with astonishing accuracy. So when adults in the home bark orders at one another or treat kindness as an afterthought, the child thinks that is normal. Respect has to be demonstrated in the little things. You show it in how you greet each other, in how you acknowledge help when it is given, in how you say good morning and good night. Every one of these moments teaches the child how to treat the world. I remember watching my son as he started giving his aunt directions like she existed to fulfill his desires. It hit me that he had seen enough moments of people doing things for him that he mistook love for servitude. He saw that adults stepped in quickly to ease his path because he was young and cute and beloved. And while there is nothing wrong with doting on a child, there is something dangerous about never balancing that affection. With guidance, children can be adored without being spoiled. Children can be cherished while still learning humility. Children can be treated with gentleness while still learning accountability. Respect is the bridge that connects love with discipline. I pulled him aside because the situation needed to stop before it grew legs and started running through the family. I asked him why he believed his aunt had to do everything he wanted. He shrugged the way children do when they have never thought beyond themselves. That shrug told me everything. It told me he had learned that adults existed to respond to him. Not because he was important, but because no one had ever explained that kindness is not owed. It is given, and what is given should be honored. So I started teaching right then. I told him that every person in our home has value and purpose and dignity, and none of that means serving someone like a royal attendant. I told him that respect means looking someone in the eyes and speaking with softness, not force. I told him that respect means asking instead of commanding. It means saying thank you without being reminded. It means acknowledging effort even when the task seems small. I told him that respect is not something you demand. It is something you offer freely so that others can trust you to treat them well. The thing about teaching respect is that you cannot just say the words once. You have to live them daily. So I changed the way I interacted with him in subtle, consistent ways. When he asked for something without a please, I paused. Not harshly, just long enough to show that words matter. When he received help and forgot to acknowledge it, I reminded him gently. When he watched me speak with his aunt, I made sure the tone was warm and full of gratitude. I let him see me offering help without being asked. I let him see me apologize when I was wrong. All those moments became lessons without needing a lecture. And then something beautiful began to happen. He started to think before he spoke. Not because he feared punishment, but because he had learned that kindness was the way to move through the world. He started offering help to his aunt on his own. Little tasks at first, picking up after himself, bringing her a glass of water, asking if she needed anything. Then he expanded into other parts of the home, helping put away groceries, holding the door, speaking respectfully to family members. Every small action reflected the truth that respect had taken root. When children learn respect early, they grow into adults who understand how to build healthy connections. They learn how to listen without defensiveness. They learn how to speak without arrogance. They learn how to disagree without destroying the relationship. They learn that the world is filled with people worthy of dignity. They learn patience. They learn gratitude. And they learn that giving kindness reflects strength, not weakness. The opposite is also true. Children who do not learn respect often struggle in school, friendships, and later in workplaces and romantic partnerships. They believe others exist to make them comfortable. That results in conflict, resentment, and isolation. They may achieve success, but without the ability to respect others, that success becomes hollow because relationships crumble under the weight of entitlement. This is why teaching respect is not just a parenting duty. It is a gift. A gift that stays with the child long after the toys are gone and the school years have passed. It becomes part of their character. It becomes the way they move in the world. It becomes a source of strength. Teaching respect early also prevents conflict inside the home. When a child respects the adults around him, he listens more readily. He understands boundaries. He understands that rules are not punishments but protections. He understands that discipline exists not to limit him but to guide him toward becoming someone capable and confident and considerate. A home where respect flows both ways becomes a calm place. A place where mistakes are corrected but not punished harshly. A place where conversations heal. A place where trust grows. And trust is the foundation of every strong family. Respect is built in how we wake up a child in the morning. In how we tuck them in at night. In how we respond to their frustrations. In how we allow them to voice feelings without shutting them down. In how we listen. Yes, children need guidance, but they also need to feel heard. When they feel respected by the adults, they are far more likely to offer respect in return. So when I think back to the moment my son snapped his fingers at his aunt, I do not see shame. I see a turning point. A moment when I realized that respect could not be assumed. It had to be taught. It had to be practiced. It had to be lived. And once he learned it, truly learned it, he carried it with pride. Respect starts at home. It starts with us. And when we teach it early, we give our children a lifelong lantern that helps them walk through the world with grace. Family is not your staff, and that simple truth must be taught early before it becomes a hard lesson later in life. Children come into this world believing everything revolves around them because that is all they know at the start. They cry and someone comes. They reach and someone hands them what they want. They fuss and someone fixes the problem. This early attention is part of love and care, yet if it is not balanced with guidance, it can grow into expectation. A child can begin to think that the people around them exist to serve rather than support. That belief can spread through every part of life and turn into a pattern of behavior that pushes people away. That is why it is crucial to teach children that family offers love, not labor. When my son began treating my sister like his personal helper, it was a sign that he had not yet learned that difference. He would give orders in a way far too bold for his young age. Bring me this. Go get that. Find my toy. Fix my snack. And my sister, being the loving aunt she is, would often do it because she adored him. She saw her actions as expressions of affection. Yet a child does not always interpret love the way adults intend it. Instead, he began to interpret her eagerness as his authority. He started to believe that he had a kind of rank in the family that gave him the right to call upon her effort without question. And that is not good for him or for anyone who interacts with him in the future. The truth is that family members help each other out of goodwill, not obligation. They are not staff paid to meet the whims of a child. They do not exist to pick up toys that a child tossed around all day. They do not exist to handle chores that the child is perfectly capable of handling. When a child grows up thinking family equals service, he becomes blind to the work others do for him. He may become demanding instead of grateful. He may think assistance is automatic instead of voluntary. That is a dangerous mindset and one that can follow him into adulthood. Children need to see family as a team where every person contributes. They must learn early that help is something offered but never owed. When they learn that lesson, they become far more considerate. They become aware of the effort behind every act of kindness. When a child asks for juice and an aunt brings it, he should understand that she did that because she cares. And because she cares, he should respond with appreciation. If he does not learn that early, he may later grow into an adult who expects his partner or friends or coworkers to carry his load for him. To shift this thinking, I had to step in and teach my son the meaning of mutual respect. I sat him down and explained that his aunt was not there to serve him. She was there because she loved him and loved spending time with him. I told him that her kindness deserved gratitude. I told him that asking for help should be done with politeness and understanding that she could say no. He needed to learn that she had her own needs and her own life and that he was not the center of her world. Children do not naturally understand the lives of adults. They live in a bubble built from their own experiences. We as adults must show them a view beyond that bubble. Part of teaching this lesson involved setting boundaries. I instructed my sister lovingly not to respond to every demand. I told her it was fine to help when she chose to, but she should not let him treat her like a personal attendant. We both had to work together to show him that assistance is a gift and not a command. When he made a demand, she would pause and wait for him to adjust his tone. If he forgot to add please, she would gently remind him. If the request was something he could do on his own, she would guide him to do it himself. These small changes added up and he began to understand that the world was not built to jump every time he wished. As he adjusted, I watched something important happen. Instead of assuming she would fetch his things, he started looking for them on his own. Instead of expecting her to clean his mess, he began putting his toys away. Instead of issuing orders, he began asking with respect. These actions were not forced or harsh. They grew naturally once he understood that she was not a servant but a family member deserving of the same kindness he wanted others to show him. Teaching that family is not staffed is something deeper than improved manners. It helps children develop empathy. When a child understands that others have their own tasks, their own feelings and their own responsibilities, they start to look outside themselves. They begin to consider how their behavior affects others. They become thoughtful. They learn to read situations before acting. They learn to ask instead of demand. They learn to offer help in return. This is the foundation of healthy relationships both within the family and beyond it. If children do not learn this, they may grow into adults who use people without realizing it. They may burn out those around them. They may push family and friends away because they do not understand the value of shared labor. They may form relationships where the burden always falls on the other person. That kind of imbalance destroys trust. Teaching a child early that family is not staff prevents a lifetime of strained relationships. There is also an important truth that children must learn about responsibility. Responsibility is not punishment. It is preparation. When children do age-appropriate tasks, they learn skill and pride in their own capability. When they clean up after themselves, they learn ownership. When they help set the table, they learn cooperation. When they assist younger siblings or elders, they learn compassion. These experiences shape them into reliable adults. If they are always shielded from responsibility by family members eager to help, they never build the muscles needed for independence. I wanted my son to know that he was capable of doing many things on his own and that needing help sometimes was normal, but relying on others constantly was not. So I began encouraging him to take part in daily tasks. I asked him to carry his plate to the sink. I guided him to put his shoes away. I showed him how to fold small items of clothing. With each new task, his confidence grew and he began to rely less on others. This shift also made him more appreciative when someone did help him. Because he knew the work that went into the task, he valued it more when someone offered support. Another crucial piece of this lesson lies in how adults model behavior. Children learn from what they see far more than what they hear. If they see adults treating one family member like staff, they will copy that dynamic. If they see one person doing everything while others coast, they may decide that this is normal. If they see someone speaking to a relative with disrespect, they may see no reason to speak kindly themselves. So I made sure he saw me offering help to my sister. I made sure he heard me thanking her sincerely when she did something thoughtful. I made sure he witnessed shared work that flowed without resentment. Those examples spoke louder than any lecture. Over time he began to imitate these behaviors. He started offering help to her. He began to check on her when she was tired. He took pride in doing tasks that made her smile. He did not become perfect overnight, of course. But the change was real and steady and rooted in understanding rather than fear. Teaching that family is not staff also strengthens the family bond. When children see family members as partners, they develop a sense of unity. They begin to understand that the household thrives when everyone plays a part. They learn to respect boundaries and appreciate contributions. They see love as something active, not something transactional. They learn that love expresses itself through care and cooperation rather than servitude. This lesson also protects the mental and emotional well-being of caregivers. Family members who feel used rather than appreciated often build quiet resentment. They begin to pull away. They begin to feel unvalued. When a child learns to treat family with respect, that burden lifts. The atmosphere becomes lighter. Interactions become joyful instead of draining. And children grow up surrounded by adults who feel good about showing them affection because the affection is not being taken advantage of. Understanding that family is not staff also helps children navigate social spaces outside the home. They learn how to interact with teachers, with teammates, with neighbors, with authority figures. They understand that every relationship involves effort from both sides. They learn that they must contribute to group activities. They learn that asking for help requires politeness. They learn how to function in communities. This becomes invaluable as they grow older and face situations that require teamwork, cooperation, and humility. In the end, teaching this lesson is an act of love. It prepares children for adulthood in a world where no one exists to meet every need for them. It teaches them that relationships flourish when effort and respect flow freely in both directions. It teaches them that people are not tools or accessories. It teaches them that the heart of family is connection, not service. When children understand this truth, they move through life with a deeper sense of humanity. They form stronger bonds. They experience more gratitude. They develop into adults who contribute rather than consume. And they create families of their own that operate with mutual respect and shared love. That is why we must teach them early and teach them consistently that family is not their staff. Family is their circle, their support, their team. And when a child learns to honor that team, everyone in the home thrives. Correct privately but teach publicly is one of the most important truths a parent or guardian can learn. Children are delicate in ways adults often forget. Their pride may be small but it is powerful. Their feelings may be simple but they run deep. A harsh correction in front of others can bruise a child's confidence in a way that lasts long after the moment ends. Yet children still need guidance, and they need it often. So the art lies in knowing when to pull a child aside so the lesson can be learned without shame, and when to bring the family together to reinforce the lesson in a positive way. This balance is essential in raising thoughtful, respectful, and emotionally strong children. When my son snapped his fingers at his aunt, I felt the heat rise in my chest. In that moment I wanted to correct him right there in front of her and everyone else. The disrespect was so obvious that the urge to respond instantly felt natural. Yet I stopped myself because I knew that public correction could steal the chance for him to truly hear me. A child who feels embarrassed or exposed often shuts down. Their ears close. Their hearts close. They become defensive. So instead of reacting, I took a breath and called him to me gently. I waited until his eyes met mine, and then I asked him to step into another room for a moment. That choice changed everything. When I corrected him privately, he had no audience to impress and no witnesses to judge him. He stood there with his little shoulders tight and his eyes wide because he knew something had gone wrong, but he did not have the added fear of everyone watching him be scolded. I spoke slowly and clearly. I explained why his behavior was not acceptable. I explained that snapping at someone, especially someone who loves you, was disrespectful. I explained that tone matters and that words matter. Because we were alone, he listened. Truly listened. His face softened. His posture relaxed. By the end he understood not only that he had done something wrong but why it was wrong. That is the difference privacy makes. Correcting privately protects a child's dignity. It allows them to grow without feeling small. It gives them space to ask questions without fear of judgment. It encourages honesty because they know there is no crowd waiting to react. A child corrected privately is far more likely to admit their mistakes and acknowledge their feelings. They may cry. They may open up. They may express confusion. All of these reactions are healthy and necessary parts of learning. But none of them happen when a child feels the eyes of others on them. Yet correction is only one part of the process. Teaching publicly can be just as important, but it must be done with care. Teaching publicly does not mean calling out a child's misbehavior in front of others. It means using moments of conflict or confusion as opportunities to reinforce values in a group setting. Once my son understood privately why his behavior was wrong, I found a moment later in the day to guide the whole household. I said something like, "In this family we speak to each other with kindness. We ask instead of demanding. We show respect even when we feel frustrated." I did not mention his name. I did not mention the incident. I simply let the message settle over everyone. That way the lesson reached him and also reminded others without exposing him to embarrassment. Public teaching strengthens family culture. When everyone hears the same message, they develop a shared understanding of what is acceptable and what is not. They adopt the same language, the same values, and the same expectations. This unity helps children feel grounded and safe. They know what the family stands for. They know the rules are not random. They know everyone is held to the same standard. Teaching publicly creates harmony because it builds collective understanding. This method also prevents siblings or cousins from repeating the same mistake. Children learn not only from their own experiences but from the words spoken around them. If they hear a consistent message about kindness, respect, responsibility, or boundaries, they internalize it. Over time, these values become part of their identity. A publicly shared lesson can resonate far beyond the moment it is spoken. When you correct privately but teach publicly, you allow the child to be human. You allow them to make mistakes without fear. You show them that their errors do not define them. You show them that growth is part of life. You show them that their dignity matters. This helps them develop a stronger sense of self-worth. Children who feel respected by adults are more likely to respect others. Children who feel securely guided are less likely to rebel out of humiliation or anger. They trust more. They open up more. They talk more. And talking is how problems get solved before they grow too big. This approach also builds a healthier relationship between child and adult. When a child knows you will not embarrass them, they are more willing to admit when something is wrong. They will tell you when they feel jealous or frustrated or confused. They will confess when they broke something or hurt someone or made a poor choice. They will come to you because they trust that your guidance comes from love, not shame. And once a child sees you as a safe place, they will listen to you long after childhood has passed. There is another important reason to correct privately. Children are still learning emotional regulation. If you correct them in public, especially when other kids are watching, they may react not with understanding but with embarrassment or anger. They may shout. They may deny. They may lash out. Not because they refuse to listen but because the emotional pressure is too high. This can turn a small issue into a bigger one. Privacy removes this pressure and allows correction to unfold calmly. On the other hand, teaching publicly strengthens the family's collective memory of what is right. It creates a culture where lessons are not tied to shame. Instead, lessons become shared tools. They become reminders of how to treat each other with love and respect. Public teaching should always be gentle. It should sound like guidance, not scolding. It should uplift rather than embarrass. When delivered this way, public teaching becomes a form of leadership. I remember the day after correcting my son privately, I made sure the atmosphere was calm and warm. We were all sitting together. maybe watching TV or preparing for a meal. I said softly that it is important to speak with care because words carry power. I said asking politely makes life smoother for everyone. I said that we show love through our tone. My son heard every word and knew the message connected to him, yet he did not feel singled out. Instead, he felt part of a shared commitment to kindness. That feeling inspired him to do better, not out of fear but out of belonging. Children thrive when they feel both protected and included. Correcting privately protects them. Teaching publicly includes them. When you combine both approaches, you create a balanced environment that supports emotional maturity. A child learns accountability without losing self-esteem. They learn humility without feeling humiliated. They learn respect without feeling crushed. Adults benefit from this method as well. It helps reduce conflict. It prevents anger from escalating. It keeps the household peaceful. It encourages parents and caregivers to pause before reacting. That pause alone can prevent many unnecessary fights. It allows the adult to approach the situation with clarity rather than frustration. When adults model calm correction, children learn calm behavior. They learn how to handle conflict with grace. They learn that problems can be solved without shouting, without shame, without fear. Correct privately, teach publicly is also a strong foundation for lifelong communication. Children who grow up with this style of guidance learn to approach difficult conversations more gently. They learn to pull someone aside when they need to give feedback. They learn to protect the dignity of others just as theirs was protected. They learn that public humiliation is unnecessary and unkind. They learn empathy in a real, tangible way. This lesson creates ripple effects across every future relationship they will have. Friendships, partnerships, work relationships, community interactions. The skill of correcting privately while teaching publicly builds leaders. Leaders who uplift others instead of tearing them down. Leaders who handle mistakes with wisdom instead of cruelty. When my son reflected on that moment, he eventually told me he appreciated that I did not yell in front of everyone. He said it made it easier to listen. He said he felt safe even though he had done something wrong. That is the goal. Correction should never crush a child. It should guide them toward better choices. It should strengthen them, not weaken them. Teaching publicly then became a way to reinforce the values he had learned. Over time, he stopped snapping at people. He stopped demanding. He used polite language more often. He became aware of his tone. He even started reminding younger cousins to speak kindly. That showed me he had internalized the value. He had grown not just in behavior but in understanding. That is why this method works. It transforms mistakes into moments of growth. It transforms conflict into connection. It transforms discipline into love. When children are corrected privately and taught publicly, they learn that guidance is not punishment. It is care. It is protection. It is love expressed through structure. And when children understand that, they flourish. Model the behavior you want to see, because children learn more from what you do than from what you say. This truth sits at the heart of every home, and it shapes every moment of parenting. A child watches before he listens. He studies the movement of the people around him. He notices the tone of their voices, the rhythm of their actions, the way they treat each other, the way they handle stress, and the way they solve problems. All these quiet observations settle into his growing mind and eventually become the foundation for how he behaves. If we want children to speak gently, then we must speak gently. If we want them to show respect, then we must show respect. If we want them to be patient, then we must practice patience. That is how real teaching works. When my son treated his aunt like a servant, I understood quickly that words alone would not reshape his thinking. Telling a child to be polite does far less than showing a child what politeness looks like. Children are natural imitators. They mirror everyone around them, especially the adults they admire. So the first place I looked when he acted entitled was not at him but at myself. What had he seen me do? What had he heard me say? Had he watched me treat others with gratitude? Had he seen me take responsibility for my own tasks? Had he witnessed me asking for help with kindness? Had he seen me model humility? These questions matter because a child does not grow in isolation. A child grows in an environment formed by the behavior of adults. I began paying closer attention to the way I interacted with others in his presence. I took note of how I addressed my sister, how I responded when someone offered help, how I reacted when I felt tired or frustrated. If I wanted him to grow into a respectful person, then I needed to embody respect in every routine action. When he saw me thank his aunt for even the smallest gesture, he started to understand the importance of appreciation. When he heard me say please as naturally as breathing, he learned that asking politely is not a performance but a habit. When he observed me picking up after myself instead of asking someone else to do it, he learned that everyone has a role in the home. These tiny moments added up to lessons far greater than any lecture. Children are sensitive to tone. They can detect tension even when they do not understand the words. They can sense irritation even when they are not old enough to name it. Because of this, adults must be aware of the emotional atmosphere they create. If a child hears shouting often, he begins to believe shouting is normal. If a child sees adults rolling their eyes or speaking with harshness, he begins to imitate that same attitude. That is why modeling matters so much. When we create an environment filled with calm responses and respectful dialogue, children absorb these qualities and begin to reflect them. They learn not because they are forced but because they see the behavior modeled naturally every day. One powerful example came when my son watched me apologize to my sister for something small. I do not even remember what it was. Maybe I interrupted her or forgot something she asked. But I made sure to apologize sincerely and clearly. My son looked surprised. To him, adults were always right, always in control, always beyond correction. But when he saw that I could admit a mistake, he realized that saying sorry was not a sign of weakness but of strength. Later that week he apologized to me without being told. It was one of those quiet parenting victories that prove modeling is effective. Modeling also teaches emotional regulation. Children feel emotions strongly and often without understanding them. They watch us to learn how to handle those emotions. If they see us slam doors or snap at people when we feel stressed, they begin to believe that this is how frustration should be expressed. But if they see us breathe deeply and take a moment before responding, they begin to learn patience. Patience is not something you can simply instruct a child to have. You must demonstrate it regularly. When a child watches you stay steady during a stressful moment, he learns that steadiness is possible. Over time, that becomes part of his own toolkit. Another important part of modeling behavior is consistency. You cannot ask a child to speak kindly if you speak harshly. You cannot ask a child to share if you never share your time or attention. You cannot ask a child to keep things tidy if you leave your own belongings scattered. Children are quick to notice inconsistencies. They may not say anything, but they observe and absorb. If they see that adults expect one thing but do another, they begin to distrust the rules. They may resist or ignore expectations because they see that those expectations are not lived out in real life. Consistency builds trust, and trust strengthens a child's motivation to follow guidance. When I wanted my son to use a softer tone, I made sure my own tone softened too. Instead of raising my voice to correct him, I lowered it. Instead of matching his frustration, I offered calm. Instead of demanding, I invited. Over time, he mirrored this behavior. He began to approach conversations with a gentler attitude. He started asking instead of demanding. He learned to pause before speaking. All because he saw these behaviors lived out around him. Modeling also involves showing children how to handle relationships. The way we interact with relatives, friends, neighbors, and even strangers teaches children how to treat people. If they see us greet people warmly, they learn hospitality. If they see us hold the door for someone, they learn generosity. If they watch us offer empathy to someone struggling, they learn compassion. These silent lessons build character every day. Children pay attention to how adults respond to success and failure. They notice whether we brag or stay humble. They see whether we blame others or take responsibility. They learn integrity by observing integrity. In our house, I also modeled service in a healthy way. I wanted my son to know that helping others is a beautiful part of life but not something to be demanded. So I made sure he saw me help my sister when she needed it, but I also made sure he saw me receive help graciously. Allowing a child to witness both sides of service teaches balance. It shows them that helping is a shared exchange, not a one-sided expectation. He learned that serving others willingly is different from expecting others to serve you. Another layer of modeling involves communication. Children must learn how to express themselves clearly and respectfully. I wanted my son to grow into someone who could voice his needs without aggression. So I modeled open communication. I explained my feelings in simple language. I used phrases like I feel overwhelmed right now or I need a moment to think. These phrases taught him that emotions are normal and manageable. They also taught him how to articulate his own feelings instead of acting them out through disrespect or frustration. Modeling gratitude is also crucial. Gratitude is a muscle that grows when it is used. Each time I said thank you to my sister or to him or to anyone, he saw gratitude become part of everyday life. Slowly he began saying thank you on his own. Not because he was reminded but because it felt natural. Gratitude creates a sense of connection and reduces entitlement. When a child grows into a grateful person, he becomes more aware of the effort behind every act of kindness. He becomes more generous. He becomes more considerate. Children also learn work ethic by watching their parents and guardians. If they see adults put effort into tasks, they learn that effort is valuable. If they see adults give up quickly, they learn that quitting is acceptable. I wanted my son to understand the satisfaction that comes from completing a task. So I let him see me finish chores. I let him see me keep working even when the task was not fun. Over time he began to approach his own tasks with greater focus. He stopped expecting others to handle everything for him because he saw that everyone contributes to the running of a home. Modeling kindness extends beyond the household as well. When my son saw me speak respectfully to workers at stores or restaurants, he learned that kindness should not be limited to people you know. It should extend to every human being. This broadened his understanding of respect. It taught him that respect is not a selective practice. It is a worldview. It is a way of moving through life that honors the dignity of others. One of the greatest gifts an adult can give a child is the example of growth. When a child sees an adult working on improving themselves, the child learns that growth never ends. If I lost my temper, I admitted it and tried again. If I forgot something, I corrected myself. If I made a mistake, I learned from it. This taught my son that perfection is not the goal. Effort is. Honesty is. Improvement is. Modeling the behavior you want to see is not about acting perfect. It is about being intentional. It is about recognizing that every moment in front of a child is a teaching moment. It is about leading by example, because example is the most powerful teacher a child will ever have. When children grow up watching love, respect, kindness, patience, gratitude, and responsibility, they naturally become people who embody those same qualities. That is why modeling matters. It is the quiet teaching that shapes a child long before he understands the lessons in words. It is the living demonstration of the values we want them to carry into the world. And when we live those values consistently, children follow not because they are told but because they are inspired. When you choose to stand firm as a parent, you are not choosing the easy path. You are choosing the right one. That difference matters more than most people realize. Because the easy path whispers comfort while the right path demands strength. The easy path says let it slide. The right path says address it now. The easy path says it is just a phase. The right path says this phase will shape the next 10 years of this child's life. And every time you choose the right path, you carve out a future where your child knows how to move with discipline and purpose. Parenting is full of moments where you can either shrink back or stand firm. And every time you stand firm, you teach a lesson, even if the child does not understand it right away. The day I chose to stand firm with my son was a day I could have easily let go. He was acting spoiled. He was talking in a tone that did not belong in any home where love is supposed to live. He had gotten used to people doing things for him, and he had started confusing care with service. And when a child reaches that point, you have a choice. You can laugh it off and call it cute. You can wave it away and say he is tired. Or you can look deeper and see the warning sign blinking bright as daylight. I chose to look. I chose to face it. And that choice meant I had to hold my ground even when he pushed back. Standing firm does not mean shouting. It does not mean power for the sake of power. It does not mean breaking a child's spirit. It means guiding the spirit so that it grows in a healthy direction. It means holding the line with calm energy. It means not bending simply because bending would end the moment faster. Many parents confuse standing firm with being harsh. They think firmness requires anger. In truth, firmness is an act of love. A steady, unshaken love that says, I believe in who you can become, so I will not let you become less than that. Feelings may rise. Frustration may fill the air. Tears might show up. But love keeps you steady. My son tested every inch of my resolve that day. He pouted. He sighed loud enough to shake the furniture. He crossed his arms tight like he wanted to squeeze the world out of his chest. He tried guilt first, then charm, then attitude again. Kids are smart. They know how to press the buttons they have mapped out over years of watching you. They know when you are getting tired. They know when your patience is thinning. And they know when you are tempted to give in just to get some quiet. But standing firm means you do not bend to pressure even if that pressure comes from the child you love more than anything else on earth. So I kept my tone steady. I repeated myself with patience each time he tried a new trick. I reminded him of what respect looks like. I reminded him that people are not here to serve him. I reminded him that love is shown through kindness, not demands. And every time he pushed, I stayed still. Children read your eyes. They read your posture. They read whether you stand solid or shaky. And the more solid you are, the more they understand that this line is real and not negotiable. There is a moment in every lesson where the child realizes the adult is not moving. That moment hits them like a quiet wave. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It arrives slowly, then all at once. My son reached that moment. He stopped sighing. He stopped pouting. He stopped trying to twist the situation into something easier. He looked at me with a mix of frustration and understanding. And then I saw something beautiful. He softened, not because he was defeated, but because he understood. Children know when you are coming from love. They feel it, even in the moments when they resist it. Standing firm is not about winning. It is about teaching. And the lesson that day was simple. Respect must live in his heart. It must guide his choices. It must shape the way he treats others, especially the people who love him. The lesson was not for that afternoon alone. It was for the years ahead. For the friends he would make. For the teachers he would meet. For the coworkers he would one day work beside. For the partner he might one day build a life with. Respect is not a moment. It is a foundation. And you cannot build a foundation on softness alone. You need firmness too. Parents who avoid firmness often do so out of fear. Fear of upsetting the child. Fear of being disliked. Fear of conflict. Fear of being too strict. But firmness done with love does not drive children away. It anchors them. A child may roll their eyes. They may stomp. They may complain to their friends about how strict you are. But deep down they know the truth. They know you are building their backbone. They know you are preparing them for a world that will not bend just because they want it to. They know you are guiding them so they do not grow into adults who crumble at the first sign of adversity. When I stood firm with my son that day, I was not thinking about winning an argument. I was thinking about who he would become as a grown person. A future man who shows kindness without being asked. A future man who contributes instead of demanding. A future man who treats women with respect. A future man who understands that dignity is not optional. A future man who carries himself in a way that makes people trust him. All of that begins in a child's smaller moments. All of that begins in a home. All of that begins with a parent who is willing to stand firm even when the child does not like it. The days that followed were calmer because firmness brings clarity. Children thrive on clarity. When they know the rules and know the boundaries and know the meaning of respect, they can relax inside that structure. They do not have to test every corner. They do not have to guess what is allowed and what is not. They feel safe because they know the adults around them are strong enough to lead. Children do not want to be the leaders in the home even when they act like they do. They want to know someone wiser and steadier is guiding the ship. My son started approaching his aunt differently. Not with the energy of a child expecting to be served, but with the energy of a child who understood the value of help. He asked more. He demanded less. He used soft words more often. He paused before speaking. These changes did not happen by accident. They grew from the moment I refused to bend. The moment I chose to teach rather than tolerate. The moment I placed growth above ease. Standing firm is not a one-time act. It is a continuous choice. You might think you have taught the lesson once and that it will stay forever. But children need reminders, not harsh ones, just steady ones, consistent ones. And every time you repeat the lesson, you are reinforcing a value that will shape their character. That is the work of parenting. It is not fast. It is not glamorous. It is steady. It is repeated. It is layered. And it is deeply rewarding when you finally see the results in your child's actions. People often say that kids remember the fun moments, the trips, the gifts, the surprises, but what truly shapes them are the quiet moments of correction. The moments when an adult they trust looks them in the eyes and says, this behavior is not who you are. You are better than this. I know you are. Let me guide you. Those moments stick to the soul. Those moments become inner voices that follow the child for years. Voices that speak up long after the parent is not in the room. When parents fail to stand firm, children grow without direction. They float. They guess. They test. They push. They misbehave not out of malice but out of confusion. Because without boundaries love feels thin and unstable. But when love is paired with firmness, love becomes structure. Love becomes guidance. Love becomes leadership. That is how children thrive. I learned that day that firmness is not an act of control. It is an act of care. It is a promise that you will protect your child even from the parts of themselves that need shaping. A promise that you will not let their worst habits define their future. A promise that you will help them grow even when it is uncomfortable. And a promise that you will always choose the right path over the easy one. And when my son finally understood that lesson fully, he did something simple but powerful. He hugged me without being told. He said thank you, not forced, not reminded. It came from his own heart. And in that small moment I knew the firmness had done exactly what it needed to do. It had shaped him not through fear but through love. And that is what standing firm is all about. Growth in a child does not always appear in spectacular moments. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Sometimes it slips in through the smallest gesture. Sometimes it shows up in a sentence so soft you almost miss it. But when you slow down and look closely, you begin to notice that every small act of maturity, every gentle word, every thoughtful choice carries the weight of something far bigger. Growth is not an event. It is a slow and steady layering of lessons learned and lived. It is a process that unfolds in ways that surprise you even when you think you know your child completely. After everything that happened with my son and the way he treated my sister, I kept my eyes open for signs that he had truly changed. Not because I expected perfection. No child is perfect and no child needs to be. But because I wanted to know if the lessons had settled into his heart instead of just floating on the surface. I wanted to know if he had absorbed the meaning behind respect and empathy and awareness. And what I began to notice in the days and weeks that followed was that his transformation did not come in one big dramatic burst. It came in small steady shifts that showed he was growing from the inside out. The first shift appeared in the way he watched people. He had always noticed things, but now he noticed things with intention. He saw when his aunt was carrying too many bags and rushed to lighten her load. He saw when his grandmother moved slowly and stepped ahead to open the door for her without being asked. He saw when his cousin felt left out during a game and invited him back in with patience instead of annoyance. These small choices carried the weight of everything he had been taught. They showed that he was starting to understand that other people have needs, feelings, and limits that matter. Another shift appeared in the way he spoke. His tone softened. The sharp edge that had been creeping into his voice was gone. He asked instead of demanded. He thanked without reminders. He apologized quickly when he made a mistake. He spoke with a sense of awareness that had never existed before. It was as if something inside him had awakened, and now he understood that words carry power. They can lift someone up or tear them down. And he had chosen to lift. That choice showed growth deeper than anything I could have forced through lectures alone. Growth also appeared in the moments when no one was watching. Those were the moments that revealed the most. Because growth is not only about behavior in public. It is about the decisions made in private. I caught glimpses of him putting away his own plate without being reminded. I saw him making his bed because he knew it was his responsibility. I heard him whispering encouragement to himself when he struggled with his homework instead of throwing a tantrum. Every one of those moments told me that he was learning to manage himself. And self-management is one of the truest signs of maturity. But the greatest sign of growth came from something even more important. He began to see the meaning behind consequences. Before our talk, he had treated consequences as punishments. Something to push back against. Something to resent. But now he understood why they existed. He understood that boundaries protect him and guide him. He understood that discipline is an expression of love, not anger. He understood that adults who care enough to correct him are adults who want him to succeed. This understanding changed everything. He no longer met discipline with resistance. He met it with reflection. As he grew more aware of the impact of his actions, he also became more aware of the emotions of others. I watched him pay attention to people with a depth that surprised even me. He noticed when someone seemed tired. He noticed when someone looked sad. He noticed when someone needed space. And rather than ignore those signs, he responded to them. He offered comfort. He offered help. He offered silent companionship when words were not necessary. These moments did not come from fear. They came from empathy. And empathy is the heart of real growth. One of the most memorable moments happened one late afternoon. My sister was sitting silently on the couch after a long day. She had not said anything about being tired, but her posture spoke for her. My son walked over without prompting and placed a small blanket over her shoulders. Then he sat beside her gently and said very softly, "I got you." That moment broke me, not because it was grand but because it showed that the boy who once treated her like a servant now saw her as someone to care for. That shift did not happen by accident. It happened because he learned respect, compassion, and responsibility. Growth also showed in the way he handled frustration. Children often explode when things do not go their way because they do not yet have the emotional tools to navigate those moments. But I noticed him breathing slower during conflict. I noticed him pausing instead of reacting instantly. I noticed him thinking before he spoke. These skills take adults years to master, yet he was developing them step by step. Not perfectly and not always smoothly, but with sincere effort. Effort is the soul of growth, not the final result. Another sign of growth came through gratitude. Gratitude is more than saying thank you. It is the ability to see the value of what others do for you. My son began expressing gratitude in ways that showed he understood the meaning behind it. He thanked his aunt for cooking his favorite meal. He thanked me for helping him with his homework. He thanked his teacher for explaining something twice. These moments added up and created a new pattern in his life. A pattern built on appreciation rather than entitlement. The real beauty of watching a child grow is realizing that growth does not erase their personality. It strengthens it. My son remained playful, energetic, and curious, but his energy was now grounded in respect. He did not lose his spark. He gained structure. Structure that allowed his spark to shine without burning the people around him. That balance is what growth aims to achieve. I also noticed that his relationships improved. Children like to be around other children who treat them well. And after his transformation, he formed deeper bonds. He listened better. He shared more willingly. He cooperated rather than argued. He understood the give and take required in friendships. Those changes made his world bigger and brighter and full of richer experiences. Growth affects every area of life, even when the child does not realize why things are improving. Growth does not mean a child will never slip back. And of course he did. There were days when old habits tried to return. Days when he forgot to use a gentle tone or slipped into impatience. But the difference now was that he caught himself. Sometimes without me saying a word. That self-correction told me everything I needed to know. It meant the lessons were inside him now. Not glued on top. Not performed for approval. Internalized. That is what true growth looks like. I also learned something in this process. Growth in a child requires growth in the parent too. I had to become more patient. More observant. More deliberate. I had to speak with clarity. I had to stay consistent. I had to model the behavior I expected. Children grow best when the adults around them grow too. Parenting is not a straight line. It is a partnership between guidance and example. When I grew in my approach, he grew in his behavior. When I steadied my voice, he steadied his responses. When I showed gratitude, he echoed it. Growth is not an instant miracle. It is a long, gentle unfolding. And I saw that unfolding in my son like the slow opening of a flower. Bit by bit, petal by petal, lesson by lesson, one small act at a time. The child who once snapped his fingers at his aunt now spoke to her with respect and warmth. The child who once expected everything to be done for him now offered help without being asked. The child who once lived from impulse now lived from awareness. This kind of growth does not happen in silence. It happens because someone cared enough to step in. It happens because someone chose to teach rather than tolerate. It happens because someone stood firm in love. And when that love is steady and patient and consistent, growth becomes inevitable. The final sign of growth came in the way he looked at me one evening. He said, "I did not understand why you were so serious that day, but now I do. You were helping me." Those words stayed with me. Because children do not always understand discipline in the moment. But they remember it later. And when they connect the dots, they feel grateful for it. Growth is a journey, and my son is still in the middle of his. But the changes I witnessed proved that even the hardest lessons can bloom into something beautiful when taught with love, strength, and consistency. And watching that transformation reminded me that growth is not just about raising a better child. It is about raising a better human being.